Well, greetings friends and welcome back. Today we're having a look at the Imperial Clipper. A lot of you love this ship and I've bought it and sold it more times than I can count. I think if it was a bit more like the Python, I would have played in this a lot more. But you can't deny that it's a very pretty looking ship. But before we get into it, make sure that you've subscribed, please, because it literally is one click for you and it doesn't cost you anything and it means a lot for this channel. So if you haven't subscribed already, please hit the button and we'll get into it. All right, so here we are in the Clipper. We'll step immediately outside of the commander, say hello to Commander Headless and your unfortunately non-existent friend. And we'll move around this area and show you what it's like before we shove our head through the back door there. Now, over here, obviously being an Imperial ship, it's appointed very, very nicely. Now we have this extremely highly polished carbon fiber, which would prove to be very slippery, and you see it's trying desperately to reflect the starport. It's doing a reasonably accurate job. Those are supposed to be the statues that are over there, but it's obviously fairly low res. This handle would fit two hands across most definitely, and there's not a huge amount over here other than that. Looking underneath, there is just that blue sort of matte light that goes all the way around, and that's about it. On top of the panel here, we can see some, I don't know if they're really vents or what they are, because that whole panel is quite thin and just floating up in the air. So it seems almost more decorative than anything else, which is a bit bizarre. I don't know what this is, whether it's some sort of a projector or something for the screen. You wouldn't think so, because the screen's all the way over here, whereas that is all the way over there. So probably a display for something, but it is unused for some reason. And the same goes for these three things over here, which have got a nice sort of polished aluminium edge. Seems to be riveted in, maybe? Yeah, probably. But nothing displayed on them, despite the fact that they could. This seems to be a hologram emitter for the holographic projection of the ship, which as always is about the size of a dinner plate. The main holographic projector in the center is considerably larger than in the other ships. I would say this one is probably 3 feet or a meter in diameter, so considerably larger than in previous ships. And here we have the Gudemeier embossed, and we have this low-res carbon fiber underneath, leading to these two identical round things. They clearly seem to do something because of these triangular indicators pointing at them. Seems like they need to be removed or replaced or opened, or who knows. Over here we have a repeat of the previous side of the dash, again not displaying anything. And here, I don't know if you can see this on your screen, but there's actually some really cool finger marks and fingerprints put into this section of the aluminium, which looks really awesome. There's almost like a hand swipe kind of print over here. It's hard to see, but hopefully it's coming across in 2D. But it looks really cool in VR. It looks like very much a used portion of the ship, as if someone's, standing here, put their hand on and is looking out the front. This center console reminds me very much of a bird's beak, as it points out there again in the highly, highly glossed and polished carbon fiber. And underneath is just that, again, that plain sort of glowing blue light, or glowing blue plastic, or whatever it's supposed to be. In the front here is, again, a round thing, very nondescript. It almost looks like it opens and has no interior. And the Copilot has a reasonably well copied sort of side, although this one is asymmetrical, which actually, to my mind, looks a bit better than that which seems to want for something. It seems like it could project more things, but it just doesn't. So this one is a bit of a curve around. This almost looks like it has more fingerprints on it or something, but with much fatter fingers. And then around the edge here we have the edge of the dash, again appointed in brushed aluminium, but it kind of gets a bit low res when you get to this point. And otherwise the rest of the dash is just a carbon copy of the carbon fiber boom boom on the other side. Now before we get into the rear of this ship, I just wanted to point out some features of the or lack of features, I should say, of the HR Geiger seats. So as you will have seen previously in some of my other videos, specifically the Imperial Eagle, this seat has got quite a sort of skin-like pattern, as if it's a wet sort of dragon or lizard skin, which is what really reminded me of the H.R. Geiger images, notwithstanding the spine coming down here, this vent here for your fart gas, the single strut that holds this thing up and presumably allows it to slide, although whilst it's floating off the floor, there are actually no sliders connected, at least not in this view, which is kind of interesting. These hoses that come out and this kind of circular pattern that's repeated over and over in the sides and underneath. But the main thing is, if you thought the other seats were uncomfortable, have a look at these. Zero lumbar support, as with the previous ones. The padding here is pretty much non-existent. You can see it goes all the way to the edge there, and it's just molded plastic. And yeah, for sitting in this thing for hundreds of hours would be exceedingly uncomfortable. Now, one of the interesting places it's put me is directly on the ground, so the ground actually comes to about here on me, right next to the rear center console. So there are these pipes in there that say discharge that way, and coolant circulation. We've seen those pipes before, and they keep going and are multiplied along the top of the console, or sides of the console I should say, and the top of the console is just a fairly low res sort of carbon fiber, and that keeps going all the way through to the end. That may be supposed to be another little display or something, but it's not activated. And then we have the doors in the rear. Now at the back and sides of this commander deck, probably not even a cockpit, are these two panels which are repeated on this side, and then are also repeated twice over there. So we'll just have a look at the one side to give you the indication of what it actually is. So you can see in the center it says engineering report. There's a on-screen keyboard by the looks of things, and some squiggly lines indicating some stuff, things written in reverse, and some more graphs. There seems to be some sort of a flow chart with more graphs, and this one just says analytical response, which is the only difference, rather than saying engineering report. At the very back here we have a storage container for a medical kit. It seems like maybe it slides, but it's about 2 feet by 1.5 feet. And that brings us here next to the door, and it seems like there should be a fire extinguisher here. There's a good sort of spot for a fire extinguisher about 2 feet in height, but it's missing for some unknown reason. Perhaps it's been used and not replaced. And up there it just says lock exit only. That door is about 8 feet tall, so I'm not sure how high the Imperials expect that they're going to grow, but certainly there's room to grow in the doors. Now the flooring is made out of the same circuitry kind of pattern that we've seen before in the Imperial Eagle, so have a look at that one if you want a closer view of that, but that keeps going the whole way. Other than this very rubberized sort of material, this looks like something you might find on the floor of a gym. You know, it's got a little bit of thickness to it. It just seems like a non-slip sort of matting material, which is a bit weird. Good bit of wear and tear on it, so clearly this ship has been used extensively before. And now we're going to step ourselves through the rear of the ship, and fair warning, it's actually a bit disappointing because for some reason in this ship they haven't rendered it from the inside out. The engines and stuff on the very edges there are extremely low res and not detailed in any way, shape or form. Same with the other side. So that's actually pretty disappointing. If we launch ourselves up, you can see how the gear sort of folds in under itself, a bit like a bird of some description folding in its legs, which is kind of cool. But then you can see we can't sort of tell any of the details of the exterior, and it's just kind of trying vaguely to reflect the outside as we fly out of the starport, which is a bit of a shame really, because the other ones you can at least see some exterior detail on this one, but it's just here, it's just been lost. And unfortunately, if we extend the hard points, you'll see that that even pops up through that low-level graphical edge there, and it doesn't look nice at all, really. So, yeah, actually pretty disappointing. But if we look at the landing gear again, you can see how it sort of comes out and stretches down. Yeah, pretty much exactly like some sort of a bird, which is actually pretty cool. Actually, that looks quite sort of imperial. If you were to imagine, you know, a graceful leg extending, then that is, I guess, what they're trying to replicate here in the Clipper. If you look at from this view here, you can see a similar sort of thing is happening as did with the Orca and Dolphin, that they've sort of carved away the front, pushed it in a little bit, but the rest of this ship is super low res from the interior camera, which is always a bit bizarre because surely you have to render the exterior anyway. But here you can see, if you were to pop your head out the window, as I have here, the exterior is not modeled properly, and it's just all that sort of washed out, looks like vacuum formed. This is what the sides should actually look like, rather than that vacuum formed kind of shape. So I'm not really sure what happened there, but it certainly seems like a big difference between the inside and outside render. But you can also see that that is also true for the interior of the cockpit as well, where it's all sort of dark and super low rendered from the exterior view. So clearly what exists in the background are two different models of the ship, one when you're inside and one when you're outside, and seemingly the twain shall not meet. In terms of the other features of the ship, these rear engines are very similar to the ones I've previously discussed with the, large jacuzzi, small jacuzzi. Again, the top one would be about 12 people around, shoulder to shoulder, standing up if they were standing up this way. That's how large that is, and the smaller one is a small jacuzzi for about 4 or 5 or 6 people. And these engines at the rear are, again, that sort of same size as that sort of large jacuzzi size. If I walked in there, there is no way I'd be able to touch them edge to edge. Maybe the blue section I'd be able to touch edge to edge if I did that, but certainly not the exterior of those engines in any way, shape or form. Now clearly this will look really awesome in spacelegs when this happens, because this entire section at the rear of the Clipper is designed to open, as evidenced by the fact that it says airlock warning and that little bit that says emergency exit only. So that will be fascinating to watch when that whole thing is able to come down and you can board the Clipper itself. That will certainly be a sight to behold. In terms of height, this ship, I would say, is about 4 stories in height, and in terms of width, I'd say a good 80 to 100 meters in terms of width. So it's an extremely wide wingspan. So that's about it for this ship. If you haven't subscribed already, hit the button. It's one click for you, but it means a lot for me. A little bit disappointing with this one that the exterior isn't actually properly modeled in the VR version. When you stick your head through, there's vacuum formed weird whiteness. Anyway, can't win them all, I suppose. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed that one, and I'll see you in the next one. Fly safe, Commanders.